you guys know this about me at this point, right? Um, I think the more insanity in the environment,
Yeah,
um, the more creative we get,
yeah,
uh, right? I mean, I think this is why I was always wired to be an entrepreneur, because the crazier it gets around me, right? So think of like, you, you know when the tornado and the hurricanes are coming and on CNN they show you like the weather maps, the
yeah,
really like, brightly colored ones, right? And you
yeah,
see the things circling all around, but then right in the middle is the eye that is completely still and silent.
yeah,
We have to be the eye in the storm, right?
yeah,
And so, yes, there's been a lot going on. It's also created some tremendous opportunities for us in the industry. And we've just seen, guys, I mean, it's continued to move very, very fast. Lots of opportunities. When you see a lot of turmoil, the folks um, who have planned all along the way and have some resources set aside, they're then able to jump in and take advantage of distressed assets. They can
yeah,
take advantage of, you know, some owner had a lease for 3 years and now they can't, so they have to leave. Well, that's an opportunity to come in at a price that you may not have been able to and take
yeah,
that over. So we've seen a lot of that. So you are right. But again, as with anything else, I think it's the two sides of the coin.
yeah,
It's interesting. Macro and micro, right? They're sort of two sides of the same coin, if you will. So, sort of on the macro landscape, think of all the things we hear about in the news, right? The tax reform, the labor regulations, that's a big one in our industry. And then overall sort of trade policies and kind of how that impacts, particularly for businesses that that require bringing in different types of products from outside the country. So, on a macro scale, these have absolutely impacted what we see in the industry. Interestingly, though, I will tell you, overwhelmingly, the movement has been positive. There's not been a whole lot of regression. There's been a lot of people who are moving forward with franchise ownership opportunities. Macro level, yes, of course, it's good and bad. When you start to think about what are the implications of sort of the proposed immigration policies, for example. If you want to tie that back to, what is easily the most well-known space in franchising, what we call QSRs or quick serve restaurants, when you think of the people that these establishments generally hire, what would something like an immigration policy have an impact on? What would that look like? We still don't quite know yet, right? So that's something that these franchise owners are concerned about and wondering what's going to happen. That would be one sort of concrete example. On the micro level, though, Bob, it's interesting. We have seen, I will say, probably 4 or 5 different sectors within franchising that have absolutely exploded. The
really.
first one, yes, yes. And we are looking at, we've seen growth of about year over year between a 2 to a 4% increase in those particular sectors. So it's very interesting. Again, macro, micro, the picture may be a little bit different. That first space would be what we in the industry refer to as the personal services space. So when I say personal services, think of places like think of brands that are health and wellness, a massage place,
Yeah,
some place where you would go, spas, for example, non-medical wellness services. Think cryotherapy, think heat therapy, think saunas, right? And in your mind's eye, as I described them, think of places that you see popping up around you. Health and wellness is huge. Um, Hand in hand would be that beauty space. That's another where we've seen a lot of movement, which is interesting because think about it. These spaces require retail. Now you're getting into brick and mortar. Anytime you go into brick and mortar, your average investment goes up. That has not been a deterrent. Kind of goes back to the comment I made when we were starting out, Bob. You see an opportunity, somebody's vacated a space that they can no longer afford. Another business owner, a franchise owner, then steps into that space. We're seeing a lot of that happen. So, one of the things we saw sort of in the 3, 6 months post COVID, or while COVID, after COVID started, a lot of mom and pops that were in these shopping centers that had these retail spaces, everybody's at home quarantining. Who's coming? No one's coming. And so then they're shutting down. Those empty spaces, so there was a glut of these open spaces that then created enormous opportunities for franchise brands. You had franchise owners who then stepped in. On the flip side, think of the folks that owned those spaces, right? So the landlords and landladies were now much more amenable to terms that they were not amenable to before. So you had a lot of that stuff happening. Generally speaking, again, you've heard me say this, at a high level, if you compare a franchise business with its non-franchised counterpart, overwhelmingly the franchise business wins on a whole host of things because of the kind of, if you will, firepower that a franchise system offers the franchisee that a mom and pop simply is not able to bring to the table. This is my personal favorite. So, what we refer to as home services, both commercial and residential services. So, think about all of the products and services that a homeowner needs in their home, right? Plumbing, electrical, window treatment, flooring, kitchen and bathroom remodel and repair. Um, it is one of the largest sectors within franchising. So that's on the sort of residential side. But then think again on the commercial side. If you own an office building, if you are running a school, if you are running an airport, if you're running railway stations, right? Think of the kinds of, again, products and services that these places will need. There is literally a franchise that offers every single one of these products and services. The home services space has absolutely exploded. A big reason, particularly for the services space, is again, given the current climate where where we are now trying to figure out what's happening with tariffs, if you are a service-based business, that is something that you can safely bypass.
Yeah.
So huge, huge boom in that service sector. Absolutely. Absolutely. In the last 12 months, we have seen the biggest growth happen in the Southeast and the Southwest regions of the country. So think places like Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Virginia, actually. And these would be due to, again, business-friendly climates, business-friendly policies in these states, coupled with lower cost of living. So a lot of people moving from, so I'll give you an example. We are currently working with a handful of people with all that's been happening with DOGE. These were federal government employees. They went to their jobs on Monday. They went back in on Tuesday morning and their key cards didn't work, right? So you had literally the rugs being pulled out from underneath them. These clients, they moved to Washington, D.C. for their jobs. These are folks who have now moved back to whatever states that they were from. And they are looking at franchise businesses as sort of their next to say, I made this move, I uprooted my family, I went to DC for the job, here's where I am, I'm going to go back to where I came from, and this is where I'm going to settle. I'm not moving again. So it's all of these, again, at the micro level, these are the kinds of decision making I think is what's happening. Some recent experiences with veterans. We placed a couple of people recently across different franchises. Off the top of my head, I believe all of them were in the home services space, with maybe the exception of one that was more in the education space, children's education space. So that continues to be a big one. As you know, we work with a lot of veterans. Um, there continue to be these opportunities within the veteran space. When you think about the VetFran program, which is a program designed within the franchise industry to be able to provide certain benefits and resources to franchise owners who are veterans, that continues to be a big attraction to a lot of the candidates that we work with. So it continues to be going strong, Bob. I think again, there's an increase in interest, if you will, not a decrease. Yes. And I think, Bob, there are a number of very distinct reasons why that has happened. So we went through COVID. None of us had expected something like this to ever happen. Now we're in the post-COVID era. So when you think of people who had family members who've passed away, people who have family members who have health issues that they will have for the rest of their lives because of COVID, right? Yep. You have people who have been directly impacted and perhaps for the first time realize how important it is to be able to take care of this vessel that you're given. And so you couple that with maybe, and I'm not speaking specifically about the veteran space here, I'm speaking about clients in general. When you couple all of these things in the COVID space and you overlay what is happening with people who have been in corporate jobs, maybe federal government jobs, where there's a sense of, I've been in this job now for X years. I've given my life to this particular company, but I don't feel like my life is my own anymore, right? Their marriage might not be the best. They hardly ever see their spouses. They maybe have not seen their children grow up. So you have, and I'm obviously being a little general here, but these are things that we have heard our clients tell us when they come to us. Why do you want to buy a franchise, Bob? And blah, all the stuff comes out. It's deeply emotional. It's deeply intimate. It's deeply personal. And you have people, Bob, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, and not for the first time, they're really struggling with figuring out, is the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life and career going to look like the last 10, 20, 30 was? And they're not liking the answer that they're getting where they are. And so they're starting to look at these businesses back again to health and wellness. I'll give you an example. He's not a veteran. He's out of Philadelphia. He had been in high pressure sales in a corporate job for many, many decades. When he and I started talking, one of the things I asked was, well, do you want to do something similar? Do you want to do something that puts you back in sales? And he laughed and he said, Faizun, I was really good. I was my number 2 sales guy in my company. And I got all the toys, I got all the trophies, but I never liked what I did because it wasn't authentically me. It was a face I put on for my job. I hear this all the time, right? Fast forward, he himself went through some health challenges, and he had used CBD products, and they had been incredibly helpful for him in his own healing journey. So fast forward, he meets me. We start talking about all this stuff, and he says, I would really love something in the health and wellness space. Okay. We did, as you know, we do the financial piece of it. How much money are we looking at? How much money do you want to invest? What kinds of interests do you have and all three have to essentially align. With most of the health and wellness opportunities that we have in the industry, it requires a retail space, brick and mortar. He wasn't willing to put in that level of investment. So we pivoted. We still kept the health and wellness that he wanted, but we pivoted to give him a model that is essentially online and home-based. It has a retail option, but that is something that he can opt into a couple of years down the road should he want to do that. He's now been running his business for at least, I think, 4 or 5 months. He's having a blast. It is completely different from what he used to do. It still uses some of his skill sets, but now he's actually doing sales, selling products that he absolutely believes in. And so there's a lot of that. When you say health and wellness, I see a lot of very emotional, personal connections that lead to that business decision.